All right, Tyler. So last season we finished up Final Fantasy VII. And so I think it's only natural that we do Final Fantasy VIII next, right?
Yeah. Final Fantasy VIII, that's next.
Yep. I'm looking through our notes. We have a story about a villain that is trying to compress realities to avoid their death.
Mm-hmm.
We have a number of non sequitur side stories to kind of break up the pace with the like depressing, downtrodden main hero. We jump to this other character that's peppy and fun and kind of a doofus here and there.
Mm-hmm.
They're short little segments and they're mysterious too. You don't really know how do these fit into the main story. And so
absolutely.
Yeah. So looking through the notes, I mean, let's do it. Let's do Final Fantasy. Wait, this isn't Final Fantasy VIII. This is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Oh yeah. We both played that recently.
Like, yeah. Okay. Wait, are these just the same game?
Do you want to just do Rebirth instead?
Yeah, I suppose, because, you know, as much as I love it, Final Fantasy VIII kind of sucks.
Canceled.
I'm kidding, of course, but I couldn't help but notice the overwhelming similarity of themes and execution in Rebirth from another Final Fantasy game that I am quite fond of. You're listening to the Hero with 1,000 Potions podcast. I am your disposable milquetoast host, Nate, and today I am joined by the ever radiant linchpin cornerstone host, man among men, Tyler.
Please, the illustrious Tyler.
Right. So yeah, this is our podcast, and we're just going to kick off here season 2.5. Why is it season 2.5, you might ask? Well, our typical format is a book club-like gaming format where we play popular and niche RPGs. Mainly, we play the popular ones together, and Tyler does the niche ones in his side series, the Travelogues. But we're doing a little bit of a special season here where we are not going to do the book club-like format. We are going to do a post-mortem on our experience playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, our second season of the podcast was just finished, and we played all of Final Fantasy VII Remake. So we thought, why not just roll straight into this to continue the experience? But this is also like a 150-hour game, and we don't want to like dive into all of the minutia and muck of this game in that way. And we thought maybe we could just kind of give overview of our feelings, our experiences, our opinions on generally what we loved and didn't love about this game. And we're going to segment it out to the game has an intro sequence and 6 major zones. And we're going to try and break apart our progression through it into those segments as well, just to kind of work through it in a hopefully quicker format than a typical season of 30 plus episodes. Maybe we'll get this one done a little bit quicker than that.
That's our aim, at least.
Yeah. So that's why we're doing things a little bit differently, because we love this game and we thought we also want to talk about this, but don't want to do it the same way we've done the last 2 seasons. And so rest assured, we will be doing a season 3 in the future at some point, hopefully the near future. And that will be a return to form for us. But we really want to do this in the meantime.
Last thing I want to say in the preamble is a fair warning to folks that there will be spoilers.
Oh, right.
Throughout this season, we're talking about original FF7. We're probably going to be circling back to Remake from time to time, and of course Rebirth. And so we'll let you decide for yourself if this sort of commentary is right for you, but just know that we're not going to be bleeping anything out that's particularly touchy.
Yeah, we are starting with an expectation that you've either finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and pretty much anything else Final Fantasy VII related. We're going to have that expectation that nothing is really going to be spoiled for you if we say X, Y, or Z, or that you don't care. We do have, there's a person in our Discord who is happy that I'm going to elaborate on the game for them and that they don't have to play it.
Yeah.
I will do it vicariously for them.
That's fantastic.
Great point to bring up there, Tyler.
Sure.
Why don't you hit us off here? Get us going.
Yeah, all right. So as mentioned, I have to get out of the habit of like setting up scenes and walking you through conversations. And so I'm going to say we're going to talk about Chapter 1, Fall of a Hero to Start. Of course, it's Sephiroth, Cloud, 2 anonymous Shinra soldiers. But before them, in the trailers leading up to this, you and me and like millions of other would-be players before the release of this game, we're seeing shots of like dead party members or Tifa in a stretcher and then her arm like hangs limply off the side of the gurney. That's signifying like something horrible is happening. And Cloud and Zack are headed back into Midgar, and things are all very strange in terms of what the beagleization, the terrierization of reality.
Right.
And I think after having played Remake, we've gotten a sense that the Midgar that Zack is dragging Cloud into is the timeline left behind, where everyone else, like the Remake, is in its own world, and now it seems like maybe we're somewhere else. We're in the rubble of a prior reality. And there's a news report that's showing like injured or dead party members, and then in his wrath and confusion, Zack manages to rescue Aerith from a Shinra helicopter, because she's going to be interrogated, tortured, God knows what's going to happen to her. And he recovers her. But we're like, what the hell is going on?
Yes. And after you finish the game, it'll make a little bit more sense in how they explain how this whole thing works. But I have to point out that if you remember our culmination of finishing Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade, Intermission, Yuffie Quest.
Yuffie Quest.
My name is Yuffie.
There was a scene of Zack arriving into town and just lightly conversing with people, meeting at a church, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And so that whole scene plays out completely different, because you enter into town here in a state of duress or action or excitement. I don't know what you want to call it.
Post-catastrophe rubble.
Yeah, and that might have been the case in the other scene too, but there's two completely different tones here of Zack. And the other one is like, hey, what's going on here? And then in this one that you're playing in Rebirth, you're like running in like, here, help Cloud. I need to go save Aerith, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's like a direct call to action. There's no light gingerly perusing the area.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of the game, knowing what we know about the dog verses, right? You would think like you could like divvy that up to, okay, one of those was like a Schnauzer verse and another was, you know, a Beagle verse, and that's why we have the different ones. But they made a point to put, isn't it that Zack's in the Terrier verse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they made a point that you see the Terrier verse in that end of Yuffie Quest scene, and you see that that's also the one in Rebirth. So they kind of fucked that up. They had it out and they screwed it up. But anyway, don't care. As we explore some of these things later, and not because I'm hiding spoilers, but just it's really not pertinent to talk about it till later in the game. But when we get into that whole, the separation of the dog verses or whatever, I don't really know that it adds anything super compelling for me in that light. So I'm going to we'll just put it back in its box for basically like 5 chapters.
Can I say, I appreciate that the developer's decision to make the whisperization of everything much more quiet in the story of Rebirth than it was in Remake.
Yes.
That is a tremendous relief for me.
I think to some degree there was probably this sense in Remake that they're like, we have to create some sort of element that like disarms the why is it different nature of it. And now that that's out of the way, and like and there's also this element in the story as we go through the game of like kicking the shit out of the whispers at the end of Remake means, like you said, they're not prominent in this game for a significant portion of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a story explanation for it, but I think also like creatively they felt like they needed to do that in the first game. And now after we blew up the big whisper god at the end of the first game, they're like, all right, we're free now. We can just do what we want because we have this like shared understanding with the audience that it can just be different now. Okay. You know? So it's cool because that like intrusiveness of it is gone. We can just do things and not have to ask why in some cases.
Yeah.
Great point. All I'll say about this Zack sequence is hitting the ground running with this sequence right at the start of the game, booting it up. I won't say I was like bawling or anything, but man, my eyes were a little misty in the emotional charge of Zack trying to save essentially the love of his life right off the bat, and seeing that she's not dead, but you don't know as a player. When you're watching this, is she officially kicked the bucket or not? And he's holding her in his arms.
Oh, another thing about that, when he does recover her, the white materia falls out of her hand or her hair, and it looks kind of less magical, maybe.
Yes.
We're alluding to holy in the first sequence. Go on to Nibelheim.
Yeah, I think we're ready to get into the meat.
The meat of chapter 1. How does a hero fall? Well, as you remember in original, we spend a good amount of time in Calm unpacking a story Cloud tells about his interactions with Sephiroth in Nibelheim. The Nibelheim incident of 5 years ago. And the entirety of chapter 1 is playing that out, but bear in mind it's in the framework of a story being told. And if you've played original, and because we've already said this is a spoiler-rich season, we know that he's an unreliable narrator, and what we're playing out is not actually reality to a certain extent. And it starts in the van, like the Shinra utility van with Sephiroth and Cloud racing through the dark of the night to get to Nibelheim. And I love how they de-aged Cloud a little bit, and his voice is a little more wimpy.
I didn't join Soldier to be an errand boy. I joined up so I could be a hero, like you.
Yeah, he's got a much more cheerful voice to him.
He's like, Sephiroth, what are you doing? Hold on.
Yeah.
It's not my performance review yet. He's much more green to the world, and I kind of like it.
Yes.
Squats in the van, which you remember, I don't know, maybe most people don't, but I remember quite distinctly in original, and that motion of him doing the squats, we have to have it here as well. That's not an unabandonable action.
And also, big picture, Cloud does do a lot of squats in the OG Final Fantasy, but I feel like that is an inherited trait from Zack. I feel like Zack is the kind of guy that's dropping squats on a regular basis. You know, Zack is the lovable doofus that's like constantly stretching and exercising and like, yeah, let's go get it. And Cloud is the guy that in reality is sitting in the corner trying not to barf. And it's interesting with the inclusion of voice actors here. They play that hand very early in the narrative, you know, for those of us veterans who know what we're looking for, in the fact that Cloud talks to that soldier and the soldier's voice actor is Cloud's voice actor, but just like through this layer of like, oh, I'm gonna hurl.
Hey man, feeling any better? I'm good. Sure don't look it.
So you can't necessarily hear it, but for those of us listening, it's like, oh yeah, Cloud just talked to himself.
Mm-hmm. You see him at the fire in the burning down of Nibelheim when Cloud in the story, Cloud is crawling towards his mom's house. There's an anonymous Shinra soldier also crawling, and he utters the word ma, like partway through saying the word mom.
Yeah.
Well, that's Cloud too.
It's very heavy-handed on the twist. The 20-plus-year-old, well, 25, nearly 30-year-old twist, hand being played pretty heavily there, in my opinion.
I don't know, man. He could be saying anything.
Right, but think about it. If you typed out in Final Fantasy VII OG on the screen a text box that said MO ... that's like you're tipping your hand. You're not tipping your hand. You're flipping the cards over right then and there if that shows up in text on screen. So them having him like groan it is, like I said, they can do more with voice work than they could before.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Something that stands out to me about this truck scene and later scenes in Nibelheim too, with like his mom and playing the piano and everything, is there's a strong desire for preservation, like recreating the original Final Fantasy VII OG scenes down to like details of when his mom says something to him, he like turns over and curls up on his bed in a certain pose, and like the flashes of when she says something and goes and flashes to another scene. They're really doing a bang up job of nailing these scenes down to very specific details. And it made me think, I wonder what it is like when you're sitting in the storyboarding room of the people creating the story and the scenes and everything. What constitutes the decision of them saying, we have to like recreate this one down to the crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and, you know, have it be perfectly recreated. And then there's other scenes where, in my opinion, they absolutely eviscerate the meaning and impact of the classic scene by doing some wonky, crazy shit during it later in the game. I'll get into that then. But it makes me ask this question, like, what is the bar that needs to be passed of like, this one cannot be touched. This one needs to stay the same.
I wonder if they produce the scene precisely as it was in original and then make a judgment call on whether does it feel the same? Does it look awkward? Is it still awkward but enjoyable?
Right.
For example, Red 13 on 2 legs in a Shinra uniform.
Though I am far from a humanoid, the illusion can be maintained with the aid of a little flamboyance.
Yeah.
And if it's awkward but acceptable, is it easier to digest if we actually put a spotlight on it? For example, Red 13 in a Shinra uniform has a whole subsection of the chapter dedicated to interacting with him.
Instead of him just wiggling on the top of a catwalk.
Yeah. He's much more capable on 2 legs than he was in original.
Yes.
But that's just an example of what I can imagine might be the bar.
Right. And there will be a certain chapter we get to as we walk through this season where I'm basically just going to be pissed the whole time because the bar was not met in any capacity. So look forward to that.
I really like how we're reminded that this is a story and not really reality by the grainy film flashes that appear when teammates interrupt. Let's say he's telling the story because like the scenes are intercut with narration from Cloud about what's happening because he's telling the story to the rest of the team in a calm, City of Calm hotel room. In room, whatever.
Yes.
A bed and breakfast.
Right.
And when Barrett interjects, there's like the sound of like a projector clicking and like moving a slide over and like like a tape reel running. I don't know the filmographic vocabulary, but everything kind of stops and goes grainy and there's like maybe little pockmarked bits of film tape on the sides of the frame. And it's a really neat like function to remind you that we are telling a story.
A modern take on Faye and his 19 other personalities arguing with each other as they watch flashbacks of his childhood.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't there literally a camera?
Yeah.
Or a projector, like projecting onto a screen?
Yes. I was going to say about that, we're playing a video game where we're in a world, but the framing of it is Cloud's doing a flashback, telling him about these events. And my question is, how does one tell someone that they played such an amazing song on a piano and they did such a good job doing it that the listeners are like audibly in awe? Either there's a piano somewhere in that inn that he's during this part of the story is like, all right, hold up. I played Tifa's piano. This is the song I played. Check this out. And he plays it live for them in the inn as well. Or he hummed it to them and they're like, shit, this guy's really, really good. Because I cannot think of a scenario where I like you and I are at the bar and I'm like, Tyler, I have this really amazing metal song that I love.
Oh my God.
And I played every note. I did all the solos. The timing was perfect. I didn't miss a single beat. It was amazing. And your reaction being, wow, you're incredible, Nate. I can't believe you did that.
You probably got an S rating, didn't you? And you'll go, yes, I did.
Yes. But hey, this is a great time to talk about, we have a new minigame.
Playing the piano.
Right.
Yeah, we're excited about this one.
Yes. Well, I'm not excited about it because this might be, it's not my least favorite minigame, but I have issues with. How do you feel about the minigame?
It's near the bottom for me as well. I'm being sarcastic, but
right.
It's a good idea. I think it's fun to have a musical minigame, but I'm noticing it's quite challenging. I have trouble keeping up. That said, if you're good at it, you can probably like play, there's a free mode where you can just kind of play a piano. And I suppose there are probably like entire YouTube channels of people playing like anything.
Rihanna.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I was thinking like classical, or fucking, I don't know, Van Halen. Doesn't matter what it is, but like you can play this like it were a musical instrument, if you please.
Yeah. So my thing about it is the design of it, like it has you like hyper focusing on one area, but then there's a different area of the screen where they want you to also be focusing on that. And it causes like a bit of weird anxiety in ways that like other mini games that are high stress, like very timing and input focused, don't have that issue because they present it in a way that's visually digestible much more accurately. So that's an issue for me. Somebody resolved that issue by, I guess PlayStation has like a built-in zoom function you can do through its menus or something like that. I didn't try it personally, but essentially they took the portion where the two like scroll wheels for your analog sticks correlating to your piano inputs. They made that their entire screen, and they're like, it's so much easier to see what you're doing when you blow this section of the screen up massively, because it's actually pretty small in comparison to the overall screen real estate. Like half the screen is just Cloud's back on a piano.
Right.
A third of the screen is dedicated entirely to Batman. Get out of the way, you fucking Batman.
But then beyond that, I think the most egregious issue with it is the more you do like a flawless combo of you've hit every note, Cloud starts like riffing and like doing fills and going full Baroque on the piano as he's doing it. So you're in this space where you start out, there's a metronome playing and it's going and so you're like, okay, all right, I've got the beat. I know what to expect. I'm bobbing my head a little bit. And then the note comes and you play it and it's a single note. You press your button, a note plays, right? But then the better you do, the more they're throwing in notes that you aren't playing. So like you're seeing, oh, there's 3 commands coming down the pipe that I need to press. But the song is going, and it's like, oh my God, stop. I need like to just turn off the music in some of these because they're a huge distraction to what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an issue with it. And then they also turn off the metronome. But if at any point you miss a note or fail, they kick you back to you're in idiot mode again. If you screw up, in comes the metronome again, and now you're back to him just like plucking at the keys one at a time. And so it's extremely jarring to like, oh, I didn't hit that note absolutely perfectly, and now I've just dropped a whole ass song. Like, what just happened? And so I think there's a lot of like sensory overload, sensory conflict issues with this mini game. That's what the early songs are easy enough, but some of the later ones are like a complete mind fuck.
Yeah, I gave up.
I did all of them except the last 2.
I might have as well. Yeah.
I think I got A ranks. There's like a star rank for like doing it absolutely 100% perfect. And I have absolutely no interest in doing any of those.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's our first mini game of many in the banks. What do you want to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
4.
Yeah. I'm thinking that it started out with like a 6 or a 7, but big picture, by the time I'm done with the game, it's a 3 or a 4.
If you can do it, then you probably feel like it's much more higher rated, but that's how I feel about it.
Right.
And I think they should be bigger too. And I appreciated what you said about the streamer or whoever it was that blew up their screen, magnified their screen, because I had to do that too over the course of this game, not for the piano mini game, although maybe I should have. It's for the tutorials, because once they introduce a new game feature, they like everything stops and a toolbox appears with a video embedded in it about what the action is, and then some text on the screen. And then there's in the corner says, to enlarge, hit square. And I go, okay, I can't really read that text. I'll hit enlarge. So I hit square. It enlarges the video, but not the text.
Great.
And so I looked up, like, is the PlayStation 5 such a brilliant machine that it can do that for me? And it turns out it is. There's just a quick button combination that pulls it up. And I was thankful for that. I used it all the time once I figured out that I could.
So confirmed that is a feature. I didn't bother because by that time with the piano game, I was pieced out. But
yes, it is a PlayStation 5 feature, not a Rebirth feature.
Right. Cool.
I would like them to blow up the text. That would be cool.
And I'll just say, when it comes to the town of Nibelheim, it's really cool to see like a town in an RPG that feels like there's a lot of people milling about. There's people doing chores. There's people exercising, doing a little bit of a martial arts routine. And like there's houses more than the 3 that you see typically. And so this town feels lived in. It feels big. They're expanding upon the fantasy that Nibelheim is a place where like a whole community could exist.
It feels good to be back. It feels good to explore Nibelheim in the remake Moodverse.
Right.
in the rebirth whirlquill verse.
I think on the tail end of spending 150 hours in this game, you kind of lose that sense of awe and wonder you had the first day you were playing it, and some of those memories kind of fade. But I do recall genuinely being floored by the level of detail they put into the world.
Can I say one thing about that level of detail?
Yes.
Cloud walks up to a soup line.
Right.
Or this woman under a ragged canopy who's like dispensing food, and she hands him this sandwich, and it feels so out of place. It's this grimy foothills town, mining town, big, shadow of the giant peaks, like looking down on the town. And she's got this crisp white ass sandwich, and she hands it to him, and it feels to me like, and I suppose I could look this up in the Japanese version, that it was some other like meal that is endemic to Japan, and that they swapped it out because I don't have the vocabulary for like what kind of cuisine it could be, but I feel like they swapped it out for something that Western audiences would accept, that Cloud would eat instead.
There's those like rice cakes that it's a compacted chunk of rice.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm at a loss for names. Maybe this is my morning. Maybe this will be an issue for the morning format, is I'm stupid in the morning. No, I'm kidding.
But you get what I mean. If you go back and you look, the sandwich is like so out of place. It belongs in a middle school lunchroom, not in this.
Right.
Not like from this woman who's like stirring a giant kettle on a campfire with a ripped up, I don't know, with like peasant clothes. It's
right.
Just a tiny thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing, a little attention to detail thing that happens in the town too. Cloud can go up on the water tower, the famous water tower from the scene. And you can do this 2 times in the game, here in Nibelheim in the past, and when you visit Nibelheim in the present. And every time you do anything with Cloud in this game, like you want to sit down and play cards, he needs a place to sheathe his sword, his giant ass sword on his back, right? And so he takes off his sword, he leans it up against the wall, he puts it in a tray. And so here, when you go to Nibelheim, you're in this flashback, Cloud just goes to the water tower, sits down with his sword on his back, which would be clipping through the floor because of how big it is. Now, when you go here in the present day and Cloud wants to take a seat on the tower, he makes a point to take off his sword and lean it against the tower before sitting down, which tells you, this is very interesting, I thought, that it was actually Cloud who went up and sat there, not Zach, during the visit, because in the flashback, he never had a sword on his back, so he wouldn't remember setting the sword to the side and then sitting down in the flashback.
That's pretty interesting.
And so I thought that was a nice little nugget for them to put in there, is that you literally see him take it off and set it down somewhere hundreds of times in this game, except for there.
Interesting pickup. Very cool.
He's just a regular ass soldier with a gun on his holster.
Nate, what do you think of Zangan?
Rashard Sangan, a humble traveler of the world and teacher of martial arts to the youth.
He is my D&D RPG main. That is who I play as in basically everything I can.
Dude is amazing.
My time that I played D&D with you, I was basically playing a Zangan. Like,
you were a monk.
Yes, a monk, an old, stoic, imposing, like one with himself, enthusiastic about the art of being strong and being fit, and that's it.
Oh yeah, impossibly confident.
A religion of muscle.
Yes. Sean Connery, buff and in a cape. I love it. Not the first strongman we're going to meet in this game. This is one of those things we decided we needed to keep, and it's spectacular. I love him.
Some good parts about this scene where he like grabs Cloud's stomach, waist, and just basically says like, you're too scrawny. He's sizing him up of, you got to put muscle on that body. You got to have a higher calorie intake, I'm sure, would be the start. But then also he mentions that Tifa is one of his students, and Cloud is like, whatever. And they do one of those like cuts of, this is a story you're narrating to people in an inn. Both Tifa and Aerith give him shit of like, what do you mean? And Cloud's like, hey, I didn't know. Sorry. Cloud made the point to, while telling the story, tell the girls that he didn't think Tifa would amount to anything when he was young, and then they give him shit for it, and he's like, hey, I was wrong.
A real talent, that one. She'll go far.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right? Got anything to say for yourself?
I didn't know.
She's also alarmed when he enters her house, goes into her room, and if you desire it, like, goes through her clothing.
Right.
And of course the film grain interjects and she's like, you went through my stuff?
You went through my stuff?
You went through my shit?
I know I shouldn't have.
Yes.
And I said no, because if you played OG, you know that you're probably accumulating date points for a date that's going to happen later in the game. And I have my eyes on Tifa.
Right.
Are you surprised?
Yeah, that's a big controversy online in the shipping community, is that overwhelmingly it seems like Americans, Westerners go for wanting to go on the Tifa date. It seems statistically that data has been collected.
Really? Interesting.
Yes. And then there's this argument from all the shipping people that basically, like, if you're a streamer or you're somebody who's playing the game and like putting media about it out there, you're being irresponsible by doing the non-canon, non-intentional date, because it's clear and obvious that Aerith is the canon date. And it's like, guys, please shut the fuck up. Like, I cannot handle you. The whole point of, like, this is an RPG, you know, and maybe it's lost on JRPG players, the idea that, like, you have a choice. Because if somebody were to come to me and, like, I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, right? And I choose to, hey, I'm not going to side with this NPC and I'm actually just going to take their stuff and tell them to go kick sand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody came to me and be like, well, you're not doing the canon intended result of the story, I'm going to say, please fuck off. This game is designed for you, the player, as the role player, to choose the role you want to play. And maybe that's a bit less in JRPGs to a significant degree than Western RPGs. But I like to think that when they put in opportunities for decisions, that kind of, in a way, decanonizes whatever those results can be. To they're giving me a space where I can express myself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing the quote unquote wrong option, that's just bullshit to me. There is no wrong option.
Are you aware of how the Tifa date goes?
I am.
It's a little unpleasant and underwhelming. And I don't mean to lend credence to the argument we're pushing back against, but it makes me wonder if the way it plays out, because they're kind of distant and not connecting in the way that you might have expected to, having poured all of these silly points into a particular NPC. But I have to believe that Aerith's is more pleasant, or probably anybody else's has to be more pleasant, without actually seeing those scenes.
Yeah, I definitely struggle with, I think that all romance in these modern renditions of the games are kind of like bad or cringy or something. Or there's like, it doesn't matter the intention of the scene. There's these, we've talked about it in the past, with the anime grunting, that if you have a scene and then you write in that throughout the scene, a character is going, yeah, okay. I'm sorry that if a kiss is delivered or a hand is held at any point, when you devoted a significant amount of the acting to people moaning and grunting, and not in a good way, not in the coming to fruition kind of way, I'm going to say that that's kind of like undercutting any sort of intention you have. Like, everything feels awkward. But I don't know, maybe I say this with like no judgment whatsoever. Maybe that's how they date in Japan. Maybe people get together and just like awkwardly groan at one another.
I was thinking it might be more leading into nonverbal communication that could be more inset into that culture than it is in the West.
Right.
But in the localization thereof, they retained it to a certain extent, although they didn't necessarily need to. Maybe it was easier to have an English-speaking voice actor to do the grunting than it was to manipulate the video or the character models to do a non-grunting thing. I have no idea.
And genuinely, Cloud kind of looks sad all the time. Like, even when he's happy, there's still this, like, he's still 15% dying inside look on his face. So it's hard to read into things. People certainly love to do that. Like, look at the expression on their face. And it's like, I'm sorry, but that's not a human being. That's an anime character. And their eyes are 3 times the size as normal human eyes. I cannot read into intended. You can a little bit, but like these people that are doing like, oh, a microaggression just happened. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I can't buy that.
We meet Cloud's mom when we're here, and she's like 31.
Sure, yeah.
How old is Cloud again? 19? I don't remember.
Time of the flashback?
Well, this would be X minus 5. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's 16? Yeah, I guess if she got pregnant when she's 15. Who knows what they get up to in Nibelheim.
Cloud's mom's super hot.
Adult Cloud's mom is super hot.
Can't date her.
We see where Cloud gets his hair from, for sure.
Oh yeah. He's spitting image.
Yeah, and we had a flashes of this scene in Remake as well. So we've seen Claudia before.
Yeah, that's true. We have. I forgot about that.
The sleepover at Aerith's house, we have the Cloud having little flashes of his mom.
That's right.
She's lovable. I don't know why. If Cloud's such a depressed weirdo, I don't know why, because his mom is like a gem.
Yeah, she's very sweet. So without going through the play-by-play, next morning we're headed up to the reactor, and Tifa's going to be our guide. And as plenty of us know, we've patched in an undershirt underneath Tifa's cowboy vest because, whoops, turns out she's underage, and maybe we shouldn't have her showing so much skin.
Yes.
Nate, how do you feel about this?
I'm fine with it. People get really weird about how much. It's a good idea because, like you said, she's a minor here, so great. But also, in general, people get weird about Tifa wearing additional clothing because, like, she's got the like black leggings that she didn't have before, and she's got like the sports top underneath the top, and just little additional things that, to me, it's active wear, right? And she's an active person, and she's in combat, and so giving her additional things, maybe the leggings aren't active wear, but all the other little things they tack onto her outfit make her look more sporty and more somebody who's out and about kicking people in the face. So the fact that I'm not seeing as much square footage of flesh is fine by me because it is enhancing the character in my opinion. So yeah, I'm all right with it. It's fine.
Also, bear in mind that any character in Final Fantasy VII Remake Verse has to wear a minimum of 17 different articles of clothing on their body.
Yes.
And OG Tifa outfit just didn't make the cut by not even half.
Right.
It's just fine. I think her model's great. She looks great. Everyone looks great.
Yeah.
Name one model that you think looks stupid. I can't really think of one.
Man, I don't know that you want to get into that just yet.
Okay. Put a pin in that one, gang.
Yeah, when we get to the grasslands and when we get to the Chocobo farm, there'll be somebody who I will be deleting from existence. I have a plan. If there's any like extremely skilled modders out there for when this game hits PC, I've got a whole document of how we could delete somebody entirely from existence just because of how fucking stupid they are.
We'll get to it, and I think I know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But let's keep her moving. So Tifa's got an extra shirt, and we're off to investigating the Nibble reactor.
Right.
About here where we get to control Cloud and take out some enemies on our own. And besides Zack's introductory fight in front of the crashed helicopter, this is our first fighting with the Buster Sword. And to me, the Buster Sword feels distinctly different in Remake than it did in Rebirth than it did in Remake. I feel like, and this might be for the best, it feels heavier. Cloud feels a hair slower. I think the wind-ups and the follow-through take more time. And it was just immediately obvious to me that the weapon has more density to it, or at least that's the feedback I feel when I'm fighting these beginning fights. Did you get a sense of that at all?
No.
Oh.
I'm going to give you a couple counterpoints to that. That may be true. You could be totally right, but because of the enhanced mobility of this game, I wasn't feeling that at all.
What do you mean by enhanced mobility?
The speed of dodge rolling, the speed of movement, the ability to do launchers or to get up in the air is greatly expanded in this entry over the first game. I think we talked about this in Yuffie Quest that she felt like the beta test for how things were going to play in Rebirth because she was just light years beyond any of the other characters up to that point. So I was like, as soon as I jumped into Rebirth, I'm like, oh, yep, 100%. The characters feel like they're moving much more fluidly and dynamically, and frankly, more like an action game. Because if you remember, I was playing Remake and Final Fantasy 15. Is it 15 or is it 16? No.
16 is the one with...
16 is the new one.
Is it Clive?
Clive, yes, right.
I haven't played it yet.
I was playing Remake and 16 at the same time, and it was always so jarring going back to do our like Remake recordings where I was like, oh God, I feel like I'm weight 800 pounds in comparison to Clive. And so jumping into Rebirth, I'm like, this feels more like an action game to me than the conventions I was dealing with in the previous entry. So no, I didn't feel that sword change that you did, but also you played the first one. Oh, you played it originally on PS4 your first time, right?
Correct.
I was going to say there's a lot of new haptics and features in the PS5 controller that like maybe you're feeling more detail in the impact of using the sword or something like that because of how the increased rumble detail or like trigger haptics and all that work.
I don't think so. I think you can like empirically time out what a 3-hit or 4-hit combo measures out to be between the two games, and I feel like Rebirth would be longer. This is not like the hill I want to die on. This is not like the wild hair I want to like reveal for everybody. It's just this funny feeling that the weapon handles differently.
Right. Overall, I think that this intro sequence and the ways in which it starts teaching you things about combat at the beginning of this game is a lot more satisfying than the start of Remake.
I agree with that.
I feel like we can talk about it later because I feel like the Grasslands has a much more detailed immersion into how the combat works.
Yes.
I think the interesting thing about this segment in OG to how it's presented in Rebirth is in OG, this whole like flashback segment was kind of like a wind down or like a deep breath after the events of Midgar, like the insanity of like 5 boss fights back to back and the high octane action and
absolutely
the stakes and everything of rescuing Aerith and getting out of the center of your enemy citadel. This was kind of like, okay, let's chill. Let's step back. Let's take a deep breath. Let's learn some things about Cloud. Whereas this trip up the mountain, which was like a handful of screens and mostly just texts and learning about the past, this is a whole ass level in Rebirth and a pretty good tutorial level where they're teaching you about scaling up hillsides, which is new to this game. You can climb on things pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
You can traverse mountainsides, jump across things pretty simply in comparison to the first game Remake. So I was really enjoying the expansion of, it was clever how they used this segment of the OG game to be like, this is a perfect place to take a character that's like, essentially you're like at the end of Remake, you're a superhero. So how do we make you an idiot again at the beginning of the next game? Well, there's a whole segment where he's a wet under the ears, just graduated soldier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So perfect. We can kind of dumb you down a little bit and proceed to teach you the basics again.
Mm-hmm. And clever that the tutorial section for leaping over terrain is a rocky foothill. We have a new sensational bridge set piece as we cross this big chasm, this rope bridge. It begins raining a split second before we cross it. Just get heightened. The bridge snaps for God knows why. Sephiroth falls down deliberately and catches Tifa, which I find quite interesting for reasons we'll get into a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the other, the Cloud Shinra Force personnel survives. And of course, the Zack, or, Cloud role-playing Zack survives, but then the other Shinra force gets swept away and is never heard from again. And I have to believe it that this war hero, this Sephiroth guy, really could have probably swam and chased after the second one, but we decided not to. Maybe we wanted to feel like, oh my goodness, this is a really treacherous. Like he was a red shirt that had to be discarded to heighten the tension of arriving at the Mako reactor, which is fine, I guess, but like, to just have the camera hang over Sephiroth's shoulder, watching the guy like disappear around a corner in the torrent, I laughed.
Right. Yeah. So I have a question for you, Tyler. You played Crisis Core recently, which is the, like, maybe not the truest form of events based on our knowledge of different dog verses existing. but it is a version of events. Then later in this game, Rebirth, Cloud in Nibelheim, at this very location of the river thing, he says that Zack, he remembers Zack being here, and that Zack was the one that washed down the river.
Oh.
Yeah, that was in Rebirth, and then...
Are you asking me if I remember that?
Well, do you remember that from Crisis Core? Was there like, this scene happens, and then you have your own separate like Zack quest, where you're trying to get back without the party around you?
I'll have to look it up. I don't remember offhand.
Because in my head, this is where like the unreliable narrator thing kind of breaks down, because if Zack's the one that got washed away, you then have Cloud, Rando Soldier, Sephiroth, and Tifa there. But Cloud is the Rando Soldier at this point. So who is the person that Cloud is projecting himself onto in the body of Zack? I'm very confused at that separation, because like I said, I believe later he says that Zack was the one that got washed down the river and nobody went after him. And he like feels sad about that. But maybe that in and of itself is more unreliability.
We get into this cave system and we see a life stream spring, or a Mako spring. And here, Sephiroth seeds mention of Dr. Gast. And I don't think this is an original, where he says, I don't know, they get to talk about Hojo. Honestly, in rewatching the scene, whatever Cloud has to say about the spring is sort of a ham-fisted way to get Sephiroth to talk about Hojo. And then in contrasting Hojo to Gast, he says, Hojo's predecessor was a great man. And as we all know in OG, Gast is a relevant character to the lore of the world, to the lore of Sephiroth, that comes up quite late in the story, but we're seeing it here in chapter 1. Now, I don't know that Gast is going to be a big factor in our comprehension of events of Rebirth. It's interesting that we took time to insert it here.
I think that is in the original text.
Oh, is it really?
I think there is some mention, at least if not specifically mentioning the name of Gast, there is mention of Hojo, and he would be offended by this idea of magic is weird, you know, from Cloud's perspective.
That quote is so ridiculous.
Yeah, the honestly, how did you even get into Soldier? Ding, 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 ding. He didn't, you know?
Yeah, right.
Like this is real Cloud in his, you know, grunt garbs being here like, oh man, this is crazy, guys.
But soon enough, we get into a boss battle with Materia Garden, the spindly spider-like creature.
Now this is new.
Yeah, he's new. It looks like the Materia Keeper that we fight in the Mithril Mines of OG. But we've got a different boss we're going to confront in the Mithril Mines of Rebirth. Fight him here. He has the Trine ability in the final phase of the fight, which is this like spell of like electrically charged prisms of light that deals a bunch of damage, like lightning damage, blue magic spell. But we see it here. So we're squishing the Materia Guardian fight.
Right.
The most memorable part of the fight for me is when we were introducing the dual attacks, and I forget what they're called exactly, but when Cloud and Sephiroth or any team member, like they use an action, they build up this bar full of little circles that fill in or don't. And then once each of you have enough, you can use this double tack, very much like Chrono Trigger. And I'm sure there's plenty of other games that do that. But in the one that we do with Cloud and Sephiroth, in the brief cutscene that plays out while we're doing this, there's a slow-mo shot that's very brief of Sephiroth, who looks like he's just delighting in his own shampoo hair commercial, where he's got this bedazzling romantic smile that he's flashing at Cloud, and his hair is like aloft on this breeze running through the boss battle chamber, and it is so jarring. And it was in one of the trailers of the game too, and I remember seeing that and being like, what the holy hell is going on here? Because it seems like a romantic moment when everything goes quiet and like the strings rise and like bizarre.
We call that fan service, Tyler.
What kind of fan service asks for that?
I mean, they're out there. There's Sephiroth sexuals out there that they live and breathe.
Okay.
He's auditioning for Midgar's next top model, right?
He is actually, yes.
It's weird though, because like it generally, I don't know, as much as like the Star Wars prequels are cringeworthy for a majority of their run, there are little hints of like fun and camaraderie between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Like when they're together kind of doing their thing in episode 2 and 3, that you're like, man, if this didn't suck and like I had more runtime with the two of these guys, and they're like, to some degree, I think there's genuine, well done charisma between the two of them, at least the actors, right? And so like you feel this sense of loss of like, you don't get a lot of time before he goes full Vader.
Yeah.
And I feel the same here of like the little quips that Sephiroth gives, and like he can be disinterested, he can be a little short or like disconnected, but he's not a dick about it for the most part. He's like, Tifa will say something, oh, you guys get to go on trips, and he's not deriding her, but he's just like laughs like, trips, she says. Like it's work for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so like I love his personality and how they present it, and it like makes me a little sad that like I know there's the like gotcha game out there with young Sephiroth, but like makes me think that there's like a young Sephiroth spinoff like young Sheldon, which I've never watched, but the concept of it is just hilarious to me. I genuinely think like, man, I could take a whole game of Sephiroth being a good guy and like learning what his morals are. But at the same time, I think they'd kind of fuck it up with like weird stuff like they did with Crisis Core. So I don't know, but
you're building your war hero integrity on slaughtering mildly prepared militia men from an underdeveloped country.
Right. Again, we don't know everything that's happened, but I think to some degree he's not abjectly evil in his own opinion.
Not now.
I mean, like, he's probably just a guy stuck in to use a phrase from Final Fantasy VII, there ain't no getting off this train we're on. You know, like maybe he sees himself as that up until the point of his revelation of like, oh, wait a second, I'm not who I think I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's not that the hair flip encapsulated all of that, but overall, there's this like mild sense of when you see just the slightest smile on his face and a little bit of pep in his step and like interest in his compatriots that he has, even on the low key degree that he has it in this early chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think I could go for a little bit more of that in my life.
If you haven't fallen in love with Sephiroth's dreamy eyes, that quick and dirty shot is your chance.
Yes. I will say though, you mentioned the synergy skills and everything. This is also a really great tutorial. It's diegetic that he's teaching you, Cloud, do this, go over here and strike it once.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really great having him as like the kind of teaching you how to play the game ever so slightly. He's the perfect person to do it.
I agree. It's interesting because this is your adversary walking you through it. It's interesting, the dynamic, how it changes, at least how it's presented.
Sure.
In this chapter here.
So we get to the reactor. We have that classic scene where Sephiroth shows to Cloud what's in the actual heart of the reactor, the things that Shinra is really up to. And maybe not Shinra as a whole, but he elaborates on how Hojo's a piece of shit and Hojo's the one doing this. And that kind of like opens Cloud's eyes, because up to this point, Cloud's a company man. He's never seen anything like this. This is his first chance to be exposed to some of this dark underbelly of what the company is. And we talked about this with Remake. There was that scene where we went underground, under Sector 7, and the people were like, hey, Aerith's where she wanted to be, and maybe she'll be just fine with Shinra or whatever. And Cloud tells them, he's like, no, I know the real Shinra. And they bust through that wall, and he shows them those same tubes, and he's like, yes, this is the Shinra I know. And so this is where he learned it. Sephiroth was the one who gave him this liberal education, right? But it's interesting to me in that in the original game, Cloud was the one who kind of prompted Sephiroth's like mental breakdown. He said something along the lines of like, oh, soldiers are bathed in Mako, so you're saying we're like these people in the pods? And Sephiroth like snaps then and there and is like, holy shit, I didn't think about it that way. Am I just like these? In Rebirth, that doesn't really happen. Cloud is just kind of sitting there being an idiot the whole time, and Sephiroth draws all of these conclusions himself, likely because of the fact that there's a giant sign that says his mom's name on the building near all of these weird experiment pods. That's probably the thing that would more likely tip him over the edge. So it's not a bad change of the progress of the story, but it is different that Cloud isn't the one that like made him snap in Rebirth.
Interesting.
But I also have to ask, like, this is something that happens in a lot of media. I can point to the recent Ghost in the Shell live action movie, but it's this phenomenon where you have a hero character, a main character, and their boss, their employer, whatever, they send them on the mission that would totally blow the lid on all of the secrets that they're keeping from said employee. If you're Shinra and you're saying, we have a problem at the Nibelheim reactor, there should be some like sort of check or balance or like red flag in the system that says anything related to Nibelheim, do not send Sephiroth on this mission. He will find his mom. He will lose his fucking mind. And so, yeah, it's like I watched the recent Ghost in the Shell movie and they send her on the job that is the one place where she would find out her like or her fucked up origin story. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably a bad idea to do that. Like, don't have her the one investigating this. Pick literally anyone else. I digress.
Fair play, fair play. But then you have to remember that he's got Dr. Hollander talking into his ear, and Genesis is like in the room, and Angeal, who's like half gargoyle, is like watching from the rafters or whatever the fuck is going on in Crisis Core at this moment.
No, Tyler, that's Wiener Dog verse. I genuinely think that the whole verse situation was created to quarantine bad Final Fantasy content in a different place where they can say like,
oh boy.
Because you can do that now. You can say, oh, that happened over here. That didn't happen in OG, right?
Mm-hmm.
OG is in its own special place, untouched, unfazed, unsullied. We were worried about that when we covered Remake because we had not yet played Rebirth when we started our Remake season. And we were worried about that. And then by the time you beat Rebirth, you're in a position to, when Sephiroth explains all this shit in the end of the game, you're in a position to be like, oh, okay, so OG gets to just be that game all by itself, and I can tuck all the dumb shit like Dirge of Cerberus and Crisis Core in a whole nother dogverse, and it's fine. It's great.
Yeah, well, until about 20 years from now, when the remake publishes by Square Enix, Tecmo, Wayland Yutani.
Yes.
And it's the Dachshund verse that you're seeing.
Right.
And playing out. And that's just how the franchise is going to be articulated going forward.
Right.
Not unlike the Nier series of Drakengard. Looking at you, Yoko Taro.
Yes. Well, you say in the future, all of these companies, it's just going to be Microsoft. They're already buying everyone.
Super duper. So Sephiroth is feeding into this paranoid frenzy about his orientation. Sure. His orientation to life, his origins to life in the Shinra mansion. And if memory serves, it's either here in the flashback or it's in a flashback when you are actually present in the Nibelheim mansion basement. Doesn't Sephiroth like float and then huck a materia at Cloud's head and like soar past him in a hallway?
Nope. That's when you get their present day.
That's present day. Okay.
When you visit Nibelheim as present day Cloud after Cosmo Canyon, if you go into the Shinra basement, you'll see Sephiroth there and he'll chuck, I don't know if it's a summon or what it was, but he'll smack you in the face with materia and then fly off. But that is not. So
was that a hooded figure projection of Sephiroth or was that a flashback of Sephiroth?
No, that was a projection.
Okay.
Because when you get there, and this is true in Rebirth, but this isn't true in OG, like hooded figures are all doing their little convulsions throughout Nibelheim. It's basically, you find them doing their thing all over the place there. It's likely, and I don't know that that's something that is expressly detailed in OG. The fact that Sephiroth manifests himself through these bodies. We know that he manifests himself, but I don't know that it's like you ever see one of them transform into him the way we do in Remake Rebirth. So,
yeah, I think you're right about that. Although we do see the hooded figures transform into plenty of things, not Sephiroth.
Right. Yes.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's funny though, you do have the capability when Sephiroth like knocks you on your ass in the flashback, you can take items from all around the room, like, cause we talked about how you can just run into things and they'll go flying because of the physics in this game. You can take items from all around the basement office of the Shinra mansion and pile them up in the hallway. And then when you enter the cutscene, the cutscene is happening in this real physical space to where when Sephiroth knocks Cloud back, it will send all of the furniture flying colossally throughout the room, and it's pretty hilarious.
Get out of here.
I've seen it. I haven't done it myself, but I saw it online. So
like a bowling ball through bowling pins?
Right, yeah.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
So yeah, I thought that was hilarious. This whole scene though, I mean, when I played through the original back in the day as a kid, this was epic. The lore drop of his past and him reading the books and the music, it's a track we hear a lot throughout the game, but the somber music and everything is just haunting, and it just gives you that same feeling of he hasn't yet killed everyone and flipped out and become a murder machine. You're feeling for him, what he's going through. And I think I've marinated in the Sephiroth being evil for so long that I kind of forget that feeling I had when first because we don't know anything about him in the OG game at this point. We just know that he killed President Shinra, and from our perspective, sweet, Shinra sucks. Sephiroth killed him, and Cloud's trying to tell you no, hello guys. And so now you're watching this flashback, and he's sitting there ruminating in the basement, I was created in a lab, and my mother was found inside a rock from 2,000 years ago. You're feeling for this guy because you don't yet know how terrible he is. I don't know. Maybe you had a guess, but I didn't.
He's a swordsman in black with a giant ass sword. I think it was inevitable.
Yeah, I guess. He also drops that it's 1977. Well, when he was born.
That's right.
Literally the year 1977.
In the Materia Ultimania, I have seen years expressed, but not 4-digit years. And so there's an inconsistency between the storytelling of what constitutes a year and what the timeline of things are. Maybe in the Rebirth workable verse, I'm just going to abandon that word. It's not funny anymore.
Right.
We've settled on a timeline convention that might be more consistent with expectations of how long it takes to build a giant city above the ground, which we've had more than a few discussions about in the prior season.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting to see a year pop up, because guys like us will analyze.
It just kind of strikes me as okay, if this game came out in 1997 and the character is 20 years old, or however old Sephiroth was at that point, it's they were literally just dating current day in the game is current day in the real world too. They're not doing it's the year 1235. It's 1997. Whatever.
Yeah, you're right. Strange. So we set the town on fire.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, fire sequence is surprisingly visceral to play out through Cloud's eyes, so to speak, right? Because we're storytelling still. You feel the horror, the panic, the hope that maybe there's still time to save Mom. But when we get to the front door, the door explodes and is just bursting with flames. You couldn't even walk through the door.
Right.
And we don't address it, but your heart drops to see no, she's probably a goner.
Now, I have to point out, this is where the quote happens. Mom says, "Run, Cloud, run away. You have to live."
Yeah.
Or you have to leave. You have to live.
Run away. You have to leave. You have to live.
Same quote Sephiroth gave in Remake, Part 1. And so Sephiroth was either taunting us in Chapter 2 of Remake, or alternatively, we're in this flashback. He's telling people at the inn, "I heard my mom say this as I walked up to the door." Is she actually alive inside a colossally burning building? Or is that Genova Sephiroth again fucking with his memory, saying is he essentially retroactively printing Sephiroth's words onto this old memory? I don't know. But it seems unlikely that you're looking at this house, it is completely, utterly engulfed in flames. And she's saying this. Alternatively, we know for a fact that you have actual Cloud laying on the ground next to the place saying, "Mom." So did he at some point run in there and get a chance to talk with her and then got blown out or something? I don't know.
Yeah. I
kind of lean towards this is Genova telling him that. Printing in this thing of
interesting,
having that be a core memory of your mom told you to survive, you've got to live on, don't give up for her, or something like that. Because it's weird that Sephiroth knew she said that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would be in a position to have heard her say that, at least from my assessment of the visual space going on. I'll also say this whole segment is very like video gamey in that like a burning board will fall in your way and you're just like, oh, I guess I have to run around the entire town now.
Limp around the entire town.
Yeah, well, it's like I would have to do an over-under of like, I have no guarantee that the rest of the town isn't burning boards on the floor. I might just have to hop over this one if it means life and death of my mother, you know?
Right.
But this is such a like ingrained video game convention at this point of like the Uncharted games. You're running, you're in an action piece, and then, oh no, a roof fell, you know? And it's like, you are Nathan fucking Drake. You can just run over the roof, dude. But he's like, no, I gotta go around.
I gotta go around. I hurt my ankle. Pop quiz, Nate.
Yeah.
You and your posse of 4 rifle-toting friends have a arsonist mass murderer cornered. You're all pointing your rifles at this mass murderer arsonist. What do you do?
I pull the fucking trigger.
Wrong. You hold your fire.
Or I have option number 2, I run.
Run, yes. You can run too.
This is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in media, hands down. I don't know how a scene like this gets like greenlit or designed, because when you think about it, there's someone animating these characters. There's someone having them like prancing around Sephiroth and shuffling and like doing all the voice acting and everything and making Sephiroth swing his sword to kill them. And there's a human being there making the decision that this makes sense. And it's just like a massive failure of what the fuck is happening. And I don't know if they thought like maybe you'll be focused on Cloud and his little crawling on the ground that you won't notice what's happening in the background, but they were incredibly wrong, because this scene is like so stupid that it's kind of completely distracts my ability to take anything in the following moments seriously because of how stupid it is.
Yeah, we could have probably done without this, but we've introduced the mayor, so I feel like we need to execute the mayor, but the execution of said mayor is kind of clumsy. However, we do get the gratuitous stepping on the dude's cowboy hat wreathed in flames shot, and I'm a big fan of that microscopic moment.
Yeah, you're right. The corresponding thing of him like walking by a flabbergasted Cloud and the classic shot of Sephiroth turning and walking into the flames, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all there. So in my mind, it's super easy. It's an easy fix. You have dude run up with gun, fire gun, incredibly insanely powerful soldier takes his sword, and you see like a spark and a ricochet sound, and Sephiroth can just bat these bullets away because he's fucking Sephiroth. Or like they shoot him and Sephiroth takes the bullet, because how many times are we shot with goddamn guns in this game and we're fine?
Mm-hmm.
There's some sort of like narrative dissonance here of, do guns kill people? We don't know.
We've never fired one.
Yeah, we should at least try pulling the trigger first to find out.
I don't know. Let's try pulling the trigger. That's a very funny follow-up on that.
Yeah.
On that quote.
Right. They don't even take that step here. So I don't know. It's stupid. I'll quickly say, like, I was recently playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I've been struggling my way through that game, but I made it to a scene where a dude is like in a dying death by 1,000 cut sequence that's taking way too long, and they're playing like a cheesy emotional J-pop song as this guy is like epically dying and getting wrecked by other assailants. But also the J-pop song has been localized into English singing, but the person singing English is actually kind of bad at the vocals.
Oh no.
So it's just like colossally terrible in every respect.
Oof.
And I was sitting there thinking, this might be contending for as bad as that. So that's, I mean, if you're not getting my communication of how stupid I thought this scene was, listeners, I've given you an extra illustration on how dumb it is, that it's in contention with this other incredibly dumb scene as well.
Mm-hmm. Then we bring it up to the reactor again, where Tifa takes a sword slash from Sephiroth and survives.
Right.
As I'm watching this scene in a review, I noticed that her midriff is more bare in the knockback shot, the slow-mo knockback shot where eyes go wide and like, oh my God, I didn't expect him to hit me back. So, I mean, it's so small, but they didn't input the undershirt in that very brief moment.
It's genuinely very confusing, like where this scar is. They make it a plot point too of like, wait, did you actually get cut? Who the hell are you?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
Well, let's do it now because that's the end of the flashback.
No, hold on.
What am I missing?
You don't this. I'm sorry. You do not skip those worthless people are stealing the planet from Mother.
Mother, they have come again. The ones who robbed you of the planet. Your planet.
Like, that is the scene for me. From like, I had to save just so I could rewatch that because there was no YouTube back in the day.
Oh.
So I had a save outside Calm where I could just replay the intro sequence, because the culmination of Sephiroth doing that scene where he tears the Genova robot off and you see the big alien Genova tube and he gives his speech, and then there's the flash, like the showdown between Cloud and Sephiroth and everything. That was, I don't know about anybody else, but like one of the most epic things known to man to an 11-year-old me. So they did a pretty good job, I'll say that, of recapturing the atmosphere and delivery of that.
Yeah, I thought so too. It had to be. We're paying off all of our work to get to here in chapter 1, and it's wonderful. We get where Sephiroth is coming from.
And then you get the I love how Barrett delivered I don't know if this is the actual text of what he said, but something along the lines of, "Hold on a damn minute, what the hell happened next?" And Cloud's like, "I don't know."
Yeah. Right, so that wraps the flashback, but we're not done with the chapter. We're all kind of tired and are ready to go to bed. And Tifa can't sleep. She wants to talk to Cloud and privately, and so they excuse themselves to the rooftop of the inn in Calm. As Cloud's like ascending the stairs, he like looks down into the foyer area of the inn, and Sephiroth manifests there. He sees him, and he inserts this like poisoned seed of doubt into his head that becomes a touchstone of rebirth that we're going to keep coming back to about what's up with Tifa. He says that, Sephiroth says that, you know that I killed her back then, so who is she? What is she?
You know that I killed her, so who is she? Or rather, what is she?
And even in the trailers leading up to Rebirth before the game came out, I remember that they were suggesting an idea that there could be more to Tifa than meets the eye over the course of Rebirth.
Right.
And we make a big deal of that in the final scene of this chapter here. So Tifa before she goes up, she tells Aerith that Cloud wasn't at Nibelheim. And so Tifa already knows that Cloud is being dishonest or is embellishing because she doesn't remember him, but doesn't like insert herself into the conversation. She lets him play out this fantasy. Mm-hmm. And then once we get to the rooftop, I'm trying not to be a goon when I say this, but like she shows Cloud her scar, and she actually, the action of her model is actually like pulling up her sports bra, or at least that's what looks like it's about to happen. And the scar is invisible anymore. And Cloud thinks that maybe it should be visible because she took such a mighty slash from Sephiroth, but she had good doctors and in good care after her injury that it doesn't show anymore. But that still sticks a craw in Cloud's brain.
What are you implying? That I died? That I'm some kind of imposter? After you left, Zangan found me. He's the one who brought me to the clinic. He risked his life carrying me out of the reactor and down the river. Wasn't just him, though. There's the doctor who operated on me all night, and the nurses who looked after me for days on end. I'm here now because they were there for me then. And where were you again? In fact, where have you been this whole time?
You know I can't tell you that.
It's planting the seed of doubt that I really didn't expect. And it creates this dissonance between these two like characters that most of the time people feel very, very warm and fuzzy about. There's this huge rift right away.
I do get a little confused about the Tifa scar thing, because there's a point where like, does she realize that nobody can see an actual scar and that she's actually like proving Sephiroth's case by showing him this non-scar? Or is the game implying that like the scar is straight up like between her breasts and that the game can't actually show it to us because of, whatever censorship reason? I don't know, because literally the game isn't like incapable of showing scarred flesh to us on Tifa.
That's true. Even when a few minutes ago I described Cowboy Tifa being knocked back by the slash and that she's not wearing the undershirt that was patched in, there's no visible slash on her there either.
Mm-hmm.
And so the player has to like make a judgment call between what was rendered because of censorship or, as you mentioned, an inability to show, scarred flesh, or if it is part of this conspiracy that's slowly building in the first half of the game.
Yeah, if it were up to me, I'd just put a big ass stripe scar across the entirety of her belly to show this like severity of, hey, this woman almost nearly died. But having it be obvious might undercut what they're trying to do with it. For me, it's left in this like weird muddy space of I don't know who's right, and not in a good way, not in a way that feels natural to the game. It feels like there was a miscommunication or a lack of execution on the creators of the game's part in showing me that, right?
Yeah, they're trying to seed doubt in the player's mind, but they're also challenged in their ability to do that because of the constraints or pressures applied to them about what they can and can't show. Besides that, one more thing I'll say is that conspiracy aside, it would be, I think, kind of nice to show a big ugly scar on her belly. I think it like brings her a little bit down to earth in terms of what goes on in the minds of the average Tifa fan. She wouldn't be the first playable character that's got like a maiming injury that is like a centerpiece to their history and like orbits their life.
Right.
Barrett has a half an arm, and he carries that with him, and like the meaning of the sacrifice and the trauma is like a throughput through his entire arc. And why couldn't Tifa have the same thing with a slash across her a maiming slash across her belly to like associate her and determination to bring Sephiroth to justice for harming her, for killing her dad, setting her town on fire. It's fertile ground to use that as a signifier for her mission, but we're going to apply the slash differently in Rebirth.
Yep. Agreed. And it achieves this kind of like relationship reset in a way, in that we're starting a new game that involves building up relationships from scratch. Whereas in the previous game, there was a like shadow point system you were building up of being nice to your pseudo girlfriend throughout the whole first game. So it achieves a sense of like relationship reset with her in a way of, oh, we now have this distrust between us, so we're back to zero because you're playing a whole new video game. You're not in the second act of a single video game the way you previously were. So we have to reset everyone's points back to zero. Now, Barrett has kind of just gotten in the role of trusting Cloud to a degree where like Cloud's now the party leader and not Barrett. Red 13's relatively new. Tifa's had the reset, but there is no explanation of why Aerith is at relationship zero with Cloud, aside from maybe she thinks you still like Tifa.
I'm going to say it, but I don't think it holds a fair enough weight to make it an argument. But prior to going up to the roof, she does confide with Aerith that maybe Cloud's being dishonest, and that might drop a few points.
Right. That makes sense.
So to speak. It's not loud enough.
Yeah. A couple things I'll say here before we wrap up, too, is one, knowing what we know, big picture about the innkeeper Broden that we'll meet here soon.
Broden.
Is he the one manifesting the Sephiroth message to Cloud?
Oh my God.
Right? Are there any other cloaked guys we've seen in the city?
Who else but Broden?
Right.
Oh my God, you blew my mind.
So there's that. And then two, everybody's kind of complaining. Actually, I have three things to say. Number two is everybody's kind of complaining that they can't sleep. And the second you walk out your door, there's like loud, aching jazz music playing. And you hear this like, and it's like, oh, no wonder nobody can sleep. They're playing fucking jazz at full volume next to the inn. So yeah, there's that. And then third, this is a problem in all of video games. I'd like to see somebody show me an example where this does not happen. But nobody knows how to sleep in a bed in this goddamn game. There's a bed with sheets, with covers. They choose to lay on top of those sheets and covers and then pull a smaller blanket over themselves that does not cover their legs.
Yes. No, it's like 3 feet by 4 feet, and they're wearing it like width-wise.
Like a shower towel you put around your junk
Yeah.
when you're wet so
Yeah.
that somebody doesn't see you. So I don't know if a bed with like movable sheets is the most egregious programming thing that somebody can conceive of. Maybe in 20 years we'll see it. The remake of Remake, somebody sleeping in an actual bed.
Yes. I'm glad you're picking up on these microscopic nodes because I felt the same way.
Right.
Yes.
I also, hanging out in the inn, it kind of made me want to play Folklore again because the interior decoration is very reminiscent of the like time period and location of that game. I played it last year for Halloween. And then the music they're playing too, when you're like coming out of this narration sequence into a late night story time setting, is reminiscent of that game as well. And I was just like, had this aching like, man, that game was good. I want to play it again. And I don't know that it's actually that good, but sometimes like a setting and an aesthetic and the sounds and sights of a game can make it better than it actually is.
Gnarly. That wraps the chapter.
Yeah, man.
This episode has been a production of Gunblade Guys. That's us, Tyler and Nate. Now that you've listened to the episode, think about liking us, subscribing to us, 5-starring us, writing a review about us, and telling a fellow game liker about us as well. If you love this show or just kind of like this show, someone you know would probably just kind of like this show or love this show too. Join the conversation with fellow fans of the show on Discord, which you can find a link to on our podcast description paragraph. You can find a link to tip us on that paragraph as well. Catch us on Twitch and YouTube under the name Gunblade Guys and email us at gunbladeguys@gmail.com. Nate, we've got an X/Twitter, Twitter X account as well.
Yeah, don't go find that, actually.
Oh, okay. We're gonna put X in the trash this season instead of email.
Yes.
Yes. A simpler time.
Don't go there.
Don't go there. Don't go there. But come back next time where we're going to get into chapter 2 and explore Calm and the Grasslands.
Awesome.
Awesome. Let's get out of here, Nate. Final thoughts? Final words?
Peace out, my guy.
Bye-bye, gang. Thanks for your patience. It took us a while to get this out, but here we are, back and better than ever. Season 2.5 is on the move.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, here we are.
Here we
back.
are.
We're back in it. Tyler, you recording at night is just a no-go for you. You are being mauled by children into the wee hours of the night. So here we are on a Tuesday morning, our first daytime recording ever.
Yes.
Anyway, we're here. We're not queer, but you will get used to it. I don't know.
We're warming up, breaking the rust off the machine.
Yes, exactly. All right, so I'm going to do the intro this time because things are going to get a little weird here. This is the Hero with 1000 Potions podcast, everybody, listeners out there. You're listening to our season 2.5, maybe, or season guidance. Why is it a season 2.5? Well, and I already jumped the gun on here. So we're going to cut all that.
There's a grainy Nate.
I'm letting you cook, man.
You're letting me cook. My kid says cook now when she means eat. She's like, cook. I'm like, no, you don't need to cook that. It's a strawberry.
Right. My kid, he hasn't done it as much lately, but back in the day, I think he learned that sunny and warm were like, I would go outside and say, oh, it's sunny out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would be like, oh, it's warm. Dad's saying it's hot or it's warm out or I feel warm, right? But so like he would later in his life, after I'd say things like that, we'd be taking a bath and he's like, the water's not warm enough or something. He's like, I want sunny water. Make it sunny. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's kind of nice. That's kind of fun.
And I totally knew what he meant because it's just been, you spend your entire life with somebody you don't even have to ask.
Yeah. Ella's conflating sorry with oops.
Oh.
Because sorry is a reaction to something that didn't go to plan. And so too is oops, but like there's more context in sorry. And so she'll just say sorry when like something falls. It's not even her fault. And you're like, no, you're okay. You're okay.
Gotcha. Oh. Well, yeah, so that's going the other direction than I thought. I was thinking like you would, let's say you lose all of your spouse's money in a gambling incident and you would just come home and say, oops. I did an oops. I'm deeply oopsed.
Oh my God.
But no,
that is one way to take that. Yes.
You're going the other direction of, you stub your toe. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm like that. Okay.
Gotcha.
We're going to focus. I'm going to stop smiling.
No joy here. This is a joyless podcast.
This is a joyless podcast. Everybody listen up. Shut up. I think I'll blow past yellow paint. That can come up anytime.
That was very controversial, the yellow paint.
Yeah, well, I wanted to lean into, it's controversial all over the shit. Should we get into it?
You lead the way. I'm following your lead. So yes.
When I saw the Mako, when Sephiroth like mercy kills the Makonoid that collapses out of the egg, it looks like fireflies are escaping of it. But I don't.
Yeah,
think that's...
we have the. I'll do a quick and dirty version of this.
Oh, okay.
Sephiroth. I don't know how. I might have just squeaked my mic epically there by hitting it, so I'm gonna say that again. Big booming voice. Just say canceled.
Sure. Great.
Okay. So yeah, when I say Final Fantasy VIII sucks, play like a big alarm noise and then
cancel.
Yeah, exactly.